friends, it's time to make our crown or headband. So for this video, you'll need the piece of yarn that you measured around the person's head whose crown you're making right now. A piece of paper. If you have colored paper at home, you can also use colored paper for this. You'll also need a pair of scissors and some markers or something to color with as well. So we're going to start by making the crown itself. So I'm going to just use one single piece of paper here to make the crown. So I'm going to look for the marking that I made when I measured Joe's head, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cut off the extra string just so that I'm working with the actual amount that I need. All right, so I'm just going to put this little bit to the side, maybe reuse it for another craft. All right, so this piece of yarn represents how big Joe's head is all the way around. So we're going to use this information to now make a crown for Joe. And you'll be making one for the family member that you chose, maybe even yourself. So using my piece of paper, I know right off the bat, well, of course, my string is way too long for this piece of paper. But I also know that I don't want the crown to be this tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my paper in half, hot dog style, so long edge to long edge. I'm going to line it up the best that I can, put a nice big crease, and now I'm going to open it up and I'm going to cut straight down the middle along the line that I just made. All right, so I now have two long skinny pieces of paper. So if I lay these side by side, it might go off my screen a little bit here, but I have now more than enough paper, actually the exact amount of paper in this case, to make my crown. So what I'm going to do is I now need to attach these two pieces of paper together. So the side that I cut on is not nearly as straight as the natural bottom on my piece of paper. So I'm going to line up the two top parts here that I cut because we're going to be kind of cutting triangular shapes here. So let's line up the bottom piece here as best we can. Now you have two choices here. You can either use some tape or you can use a stapler and put a staple on either side. So I'm actually going to go ahead and staple mine today just because sometimes I find that the tape gets caught in my hair when I wear crowns that I've made with tape. But tape also works totally fine if you don't have a stapler. So I'm going to very carefully overlap my two pages, slide it here under the stapler, and I'm just going to put a nice staple at the bottom. Notice how it stapled through both pieces of paper. And then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do the same on the top. And if your stapler reaches, push it all the way down to the middle and you're going to put a nice staple right across the center as well. All right, so we've now made one long skinny piece of paper. So now it's time for you to decide what you want to make. Are you going to make a headband? Are you going to make a crown? Because this piece of paper is now the length that I need for around Joe's head. So I'm actually going to make a crown for Joe today. So to make a crown, I'm going to make the types of crowns that have the points going across the top. So to do that, I'm going to just take a pencil. I'm going to start at this end and I'm simply going to draw big triangles. Like so. Almost like you're making big, wide V's or W's. And I'm just going to carry on all the way along. Oops. All right, so I've made it all the way around to the end. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut out my triangles. And I like to just do this motion, one cut, And then the second cut. And at the end, you'll end up with a bunch of little triangles like this. Again, add it to your little craft pile and see if you can reuse these little pieces of paper to make another really nice craft. Or maybe you could reuse them for your crown by coloring them in and sticking them on like diamonds. However you would like to decorate your crown or headband, it's totally up to you. All right, and I am going off a little bit from where I did my draft here with my lines, but that's okay. Also notice that I am cutting out one of my staples. So if it feels a little bit maybe loose or flimsy, you can go back with your stapler or your tape and just add a little bit more. There we go. And all the way along. All right, friends. Wow, it looks a lot more like a crown already. So I'm just gonna go ahead and erase my extra pencil lines that I have here. There we go. Now my crown is all ready for decorating. So again, you could use the triangles you cut out. Maybe you'll choose to color them in with a nice bright color and stick them back onto the crown as jewels. Or maybe you just want to go ahead and draw directly onto your crown using markers. So I'm not going to spend my time right now decorating it, as I know that you guys are so creative and you'll have your own kind of ideas for it. But once you've decorated your crown, it's time to actually staple it all together. So take one last check with your piece of yarn. So make sure that you're lining it up right at the edge of the paper, and you want to make sure you're stretching your yarn nice and tight along your crown. So like I said, Joe's head happens to be the perfect length of my crown already, but in some of your cases, if you're measuring maybe your own head or your brother's and sister's head, your string might not go all the way across the page. So if that happens, you're just simply gonna cut off any of the extra crown that you have. All right. Now here's a bit of a tricky part. Don't be afraid to ask someone in your house for help with this part. You're gonna take your two sides and now it's time to attach it to make a full circle. So again, you can use tape or a stapler for this. I'm gonna use my stapler again. So I'm overlapping the two sides, taking my stapler. Again, this part is a little bit tricky, friends. Staple, do one in the middle, and then I'm going to come around and just put one near the top as well. And there we go, friends. We now have a beautiful crown. So now